Today, I'm Wong Hai Ching and I'll be presenting my game design document. Right, let's move on to my game research. I have researched about 3 games for this assignment, which is Limbo, Elemental 4L, and as well as Closure. So the first game is Limbo. It is a platformer game, and here are some mechanics that is in the games is that you need to avoid getting attacked by enemies, and as well as preventing some enemies to take over your body. And there are some horror elements in this game that is quite mysterious and it's quite scary as well. And the things that I learned from this game is that the horror elements that's surrounding the vibe of the game, it does elevate the game. And besides that, there are some enemies that in the game is simple but still good enough to keep the players distracted. And the next game is Closure. It is also a platformer game, which is quite unique, and I have not seen this kind of game before, because this game, it uses light as the path. If there is no light, then there's no path, and you'll be walking to the void and lose the progress. Okay, so the mechanics are, you need to walk on the path that is shined by a light, and you avoid jumping into the dark. And this game has taught me that it does demonstrate a good and unique game mechanics, which is quite special, and it does have some good instruction stage, which is quite short and concise, and it does not overwhelm the user. And each level requires the brainstorming of the user, of the player, in order to progress through the levels. And next one is Element 4L, which is also a platformer game, which started with a few elements such as rain droplets, ice cubes, and rocks, and even fire. Alright, so the players are required to collect different elements so that they can change into different elements to accommodate with some situations, some scenarios that they meet. For example, you can't you need to turn into water to slip in through some narrow paths. Alright, and this game has taught me that different colors in the game levels does reflect the majority elements of the level, and the change of states is also quite challenging in order to challenge the player to have a reactive, to be in mind, and also to adapt to their situations. And based on the research that I have, is that horror and unique mechanics, the vibe in the game does elevate the atmosphere of the game. And next up, clear instructions and tutorials does help in letting the players know what the controls are and will not be overwhelming to the players. Next up is the well-designed levels can be engaging as well if it is kept not too long and not too short, to be concise, so that they can try and error and not be frustrated by it. And now I'll be moving on to the concept and ideas. So the ideas, the concept that I have in mind is that I would like a black and white game, which is a platformer game that is able to let the players to change the colors of the levels based on the interactions of the player. There are also obstacles between the way where the players need to avoid, and puzzles for the players to solve. Alright, so the storyline is that the character is a shut-in, which is stays in the home for quite a long time, and one day he's frustrated, so he gives himself a chance to go out to the world, to explore the world, because his point of view of the world is just black and white, and it is like sad, so it is black and white. When along the way, when he went out for the adventure, he met with different challenges and obstacles which he needed to overcome, and along the way he got influenced by some like obstacles and bad influence. His world slowly turned vibrant and back to the black and white. So he needed to find a way to change it back to vibrant, because the adventure has seemingly let his world become more vibrant and more excited already. So he needs to fix it. And finally, he fixed the problem, and he went back to his house, note down all his adventures, and his life turned vibrant and colorful, because now he's happy. At the end of the game, he went out to another adventure again, just like the start of the game. All right. So the story structure is above is that there is exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and as well as resolution. So at the start, we get to know the character and his point of view of the world, which is black and white. Rising action, which as he starts to explore the world, his point of view and the world surrounding him becomes more colorful, because he gets to know more, absorb more experience and knowledge around him. And then he will meet with changes, which is in the climax, he will be influenced by his surroundings, which let his surroundings to turn into black and white again, slowly fading away the colors. He needs to fix it in the falling action, which he needs to fix it. Then next is the falling action, which notes down all the adventures he's experienced, and his paint book, which is blank, starts to become more vibrant and with more stories. So at the resolution, he went out for another adventure, just like what he did at the start of the game. The aim for the game is to allow the player to experience the overall changes, to see the overall growth of the character, and as well as to understand the surroundings which might be affecting us, like stepping out of our comfort zone in order to discover more stuff, such as in real life. The third one is to tell the players to be brave, to take a step, and it's okay to try. It's okay if we do any mistakes, because we learn through it. We learn something new, even though we make a mistake. So the character for this game is the boy. as mentioned from the storyline, he's a shut-in and he likes to stay in the house, which he is quite quiet. Not knowing the outside world, he gives himself a chance and went out to the world to explore. As you can see, the sketching is just the early stages of the character design, and I would like to have a cap on him, yeah, just to have a style on it. I'm just contemplating on whether to have the rounded hands beside it, or just have a skinny one beside. I'm contemplating on that, and I'll decide on later on, because this character will be walking around, and he also needed to be animated. For the gameplay, there are two objectives. The long-term objective is that the character needs to get back home after a wonderful adventure. Needs to have trial and errors. Short-term objective for the gameplay is to solve puzzles and obstacles, and as well as avoiding traps and enemies throughout the levels to avoid losing health. And here are the game mechanics, which the players are able to move left, right, jump up, and drag the objects, and even duck as well. I try to keep the buttons relatively near to the WASD because it's the general keys for walking around. And there's also a spacebar for jump, and also S button to duck, to lower down, and as well as interactive. If you want to interact with the objects, you need to press the F, and if you want to drag any objects, you need to press E to add on. I'll put the keys nearby because some players they do prefer using just one hand to play instead of I press on the left and right as well. So the keys are able to let the players to use only one hand to play the game, which is convenient for them. Alright, so there are a few levels to the game, which is about 5 levels. There will be 2 tutorials level. The first one is to teach the players how to control the movements as well as interact with objects such as buttons and handles. The second one is to teach them about the interaction as well as enemies as well. On the second one, which is to let the player to know there's some threat in this game which might affect their health and also change their colors. And later on in level 1 will be the exposition of the world. There will be spikes and even there will be movable platforms which the players need to avoid and solve as well. And there will also be pictures to collect, like a notebook leftovers for the players to collect the memories, and as well as the metronome, which is like a clock, which can be collected to replenish the health and be in invisible mode for about 3 seconds. And level 2, which the challenge starts to begin, which characters will be meeting some previously there's spikes and some movable platforms, and now the character will be meeting with an enemy, which is the dangerous cupboard, which can shoot sword projections, which will harm the player. So players need to avoid the swords in order to prevent their health from diminishing. And if 3 hits were to receive by the players, you need to restart the level. So there will be pictures and metronomes for collection as well in this level. And for the final level, which is Eye Open, it's the same as well. There will be spikes and movable platforms with some, but the levels will be more difficult and requires more thinking. Players will need to solve within a time limit, which this is to be confirmed, which is like minutes or more than that. This is to challenge the player in order to solve it within a certain time frame. And pictures and metronomes are also up for collections. At the end of the game, after finishing the stage, the players have to go back to their home using a boat as soon as possible. So this is the overall the flow chart of the game, which at first you need to go to the main menu, and if you want to play the game, you just go to the tutorial. If no, then you need to exit the game, quit the game. And for the first one, players will be going to tutorial 1 and tutorial 2. And during tutorial 2, there will be enemies there, which players will be losing health. If they succeed, then they can go to level 1, and if no, then they need to retry. So after succeeding, they will be moving on to level 1, which if they die, they'll need to restart again. Same goes to level 1, level 2, and the final confrontation. If they succeed in the final confrontation, they can choose to watch a cutscene or no. So if they choose to watch the cutscene, yeah, that's the cutscene. And if no, that's the end of the game. Right? Now for the statistics of and the abilities of the player, the characters will be having actually 3 health bars. And yeah, and there's also an invisible mode if the player collects the metronome, which players won't be receiving any damage from any like projectiles or even when they step on the spike. Then there's the enemies and traps, the stats, which this enemy, the dangerous cupboard, has unlimited health. It is supposed to be an enemy that you avoid instead of attack. So you'll be shooting out projections, some sword projections, as well as dealing 1 health damage per sword. And the attack speed is just normal attack speed, but the projectiles won't be dealing damage to players that are in the invincible mode. As for the spikes, they will be dealing like half a damage like every second if the player is stepping on it, 1, 2, half, something like that. Yeah, and if the players drop from like 3 blocks high into the spike, yeah, there it goes, 3 health gone. Spikes also deals no damage to the players that are in invincible mode. And now this is the metronome, which is like a timing instrument, which will regenerate the health of the player by 1 to 2 health, which is random, and it also grants the invisible mode for the player for about 3 seconds. Then there's another item which is Slap or Reset, which will be spawning the player at designated checkpoint areas if the players collect. So meaning that it is better for the players to collect the Flag or Reset in order for them to have a checkpoint spawn from the checkpoint instead of spawning at the start of the level. Upon collecting them, it will generate about half of the player's health, which is a bit of compensation only. And then there will be leftover notes, which mentioned previously. It is like a for the players to lose in the game, they need to run out of health, falling into the pit hole or abyss, or fall like 3 blocks high, or falling into the spikes. Few ways to lose their health, basically. Players will also lose their health from projectiles and those attacks. So now, moving on to the color changing mechanics, which is one of the highlights of the game. This color changing effect is a sign of like changing of the character's perception of the world, which is from black and white to colorful and vibrant colors. So there are some factors that affect the color changing mechanics, which is the player's health. If the player's health is 3, then the color changing mechanics is working normally. Then if the player's health starts to get like 2 or 1 health left, the colors will start to change to a bit black and white, because the players are affected by the surrounding when they started. So next up is if the players get hurt or attacked, surroundings might change as well. The colors progressing through the levels, the colors at the background will also be changing to show signs of the players progressing throughout. So as you can see, the pictures for 1, 2, 3, 4 are the progression of the color changing. So this is a plan to change some backgrounds. There's like a stage progression of the color changing. The color progression changing will start from the background, starts on the middle ground, and then to the foreground. Slowly changes in order to show the progression. Right? But disclaimer is that this art style is not the style for the game. Alright, just disclaimer. So for the visual references that I have is that color references. The black and white is almost like this. It is almost near to grayscale, and I will not use some black that is too like 0000. I will use like gray hue kind of black in order to not strain the player's eyes. And the game surrounding references are as shown, which will be a platformer game, and it will be pixelated. As for the color changing references, this is like at the start, maybe the characters is like they having an accessory which has color or something like that, and but the surrounding is empty. So it's something like signaling that it's still at the start level. And this reference is like some highlights in the levels to show that there's some like colors highlighting. Maybe the red color, the color starts to change, the environment starts to be more vibrant. So next we'll be moving on to layout. So this is the layout for the tutorial. This is the first tutorial level. This level just shows the basic controls of the game, which is moving and jumping, interacting, and duck. Players are able to roam throughout the levels and try out the keys that we have. As shown, the sketch is drawn by black and white, will be almost like the color of the game, something like that. Players will need to progress throughout the levels in order to make the world vibrant again. Perception of the world become colorful. Alright, now almost at the end of the presentation. For the game music and sound, the first one is game soundtrack, which is quite important because it does immerse the players in the game, and it also acts as a cherry on top of the game in order to show that the levels are progressing or are there any actions that are happening. So I'm planning to integrate a few types of soundtracks. For example, normal pacing, which will be in the level 1 tutorials and the level 1 as well. Medium pacing tones will be in level 2, which the levels will start to get harder. Fast paced soundtracks, which will be in level 3 because the difficulties are harder than the previous levels. And at the end, there'll be a sweet type of songs at the ending of the cutscene. So I'm trying to use 8-bit songs, which quite incorporate with the pixel graphics in the game and the aesthetic of the game. Some 8-bit songs, if chosen correctly, are not complicated, which will make the job done and will not overcomplicate the whole sound design, because there will be lesser layers of the sounds, but it does sound a bit addictive because some of the 8-bit songs are looping around. So there are a few sound effects for this game, which this is like sound effect will be acting like a audio feedback to the players to show that their actions taken, or even if they receive any attacks, they'll be like the players will be hurt, something like that. For the main characters, will be walking footsteps, jumping and landing on footsteps, item collection, and if the players get hurt, there'll be sound, there'll be voice, and if the players die, then yeah, the respawn sounds, and there'll be this invincible mode jingle, which will be reminiscing in the player's mind. You'll show that the players is in the invincible mode. Enemies will be having some sound effects of projectile shootings and reloading their projectiles. If the players hit the spikes, there'll also be sound effects, something like that. Yeah. For items collections, there'll also be specific sounds for the item collections. For example, metronomes, something like that, or leftovers with the paper sound. And if the players collect the flag or reset, maybe they'll have like an achievement sound, something like that. It will show how be some sort of like a feedback towards the player, some actions. And there'll also be environmental and weather sound effects, which for catered for raining, wet floors and water droplets, and even some rustling sounds, whisper sounds of the wind. So ultimately, the sound effects act as an audio feedback, which was mentioned before, and can be a sign of fluctuation in the game as well. For example, it's raining. If there's like a invisible mode jingle, players will surely know that they are in this mode and they'll be in the zone for about like 3 seconds or something. Even though it's short, but they will be in the zone knowing that this is the mode. So they'll need to get serious on it. So that wraps up for my presentation. I hope that this will be a good start for my project. And yeah, I hope to add more elements in the games as well, and also try to improve in this game. Try to improve the elements and some mechanics in the games throughout the trial and errors, and yeah, make the game better and better than what is proposed in the game. And if there are any hiccups throughout, I'll try to solve it as soon as possible, and also try to find alternative ways to make this game possible. For example, this color changing mechanics which needed some trial and errors in the Unity. So I'll try on it, and yeah, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening, and have a nice week. Yeah, thank you very much.